We're going to get a little passion here, so let's get
Oh boy. We haven't seen passion yet?
For those
you know
of
me
you,
well enough to know that that's not true.
for those of you who weren't at the first one, Ted was up there talking. He was very intense, like a football coach, and then he paused. He went, "Wait a minute, whoa! I just blew a contact."
True story. I kind of like this stuff, you know. I mean, it's kind of in here, so some of it comes out. Hopefully not in spray all over. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. All right, so thank you, Todd. I really appreciate it. Great opening, and again, we really are honored by the jet fuel that the Center for Better Health is going to toss on our game here. They've done so many wonderful things in this institution. We're just so pleased. So, and actually, Tom was kind enough to send this to me because he and I were chatting about this. April 24th. Anybody remember what happened?
Yeah.
All right. So, just for those that didn't, right? So, $200 billion traded hands in a minute across the big boards at the New York Stock Exchange. $200 billion in a minute. All right. So, what does that mean? Okay, so I talked about the financial services industry many years ago, embracing the concept of an enterprise service bus. And for those who might be uninitiated to what the heck an ESB is, right? It's basically, just think of it as a big pipe where all information you possibly can gain access to is kind of, run through, and you have ability to look at it and do things with it, right? So, anyways, that's like 20 years ago they embarked on this, right? So now, the financial services industry has almost every bit of information, consumer information. I think this was a Twitter situation where the AP account from Twitter got hacked, and they said something about some kind of bad thing happened at the White House. I don't want to dwell on that. God forbid that ever happened. But the point is, it was a catastrophic event that was monitored amongst billions and billions of other messages every nanosecond. And I'm not overusing those terms. Every nanosecond, billions and billions of events and information is flowing, right, and acting. So this is all automated response. Sell, sell, sell. And then, oh, it's fixed. Get back to where you were quickly. I think it was 3 minutes. Right? Yeah, something like 3 minutes. From the, oh my gosh, the White House had something bad happen and our president's hurt, to, oops, it was a hoax. But the power behind that is unbelievable. Can you imagine the CDC having this kind of capability, right? And influenza, right? We knew someone just came in from an airplane trip from somewhere other parts outside of our country, comes into our country and has such and such variant of influenza virus, and we know about it. Right? Sound like Star Wars? Sure it does, but it can happen. It's just a matter of us doing it. We have to do it. Somebody has to do it, and this is us. So the point I'm trying to make is this technology is mature. It works, right? And unbelievably enough, our society has decided. A little soapbox here from Ted, but I have the floor, so I'm going to give it to you. I'm a little upset about that because let's make money is more important than let's save your life. I don't get that. It should be the other way around. Like, I'm going to get sick, or my daughter or my child. Are you kidding? We as a society have chosen that making money is more important, right? So look, that's intolerable, but for this group, and we're going to fix that. So this is what this is all about. It's how can we leverage information technology that exists today and stay on that curve, because it's not going to stay still, right? It's one thing that Steve Jobs told us before the Michelangelo of our current day passed away. He said technology will not stand still, and it's true. It's not going to stand still, but how do we get on that path today, right, and ride the wave? Right, and again, kind of paraphrase that into 21st century solutions. So we're going to talk about this. So the pundits out there are pointing out some of the areas that we're going to drill into today. There's a lot of stuff going on in technology. We're going to focus on a couple of key elements. Tom mentioned one of them before, but effectively it's rooted in the concept of the ability to monitor as much information as possible and detect and respond to what you want, right? Whether it's an HL7 message, or whether it's a, a claim, or whether it's a financial element, or a recapture component from a marketing perspective, or whatever it is that's important to you, right? The world is advancing with regards to what used to be called business rules platform. Right, now, business rules platform has been around for a long time, but business rules platform, as it's been early stages, you have to go in and write the rule. So you have to know what you wanted to do. Right? And that's advanced much far beyond that today. We're going to talk about what that means. It's no longer the case that you have to go in and write those rules. Right? It says the system allows rules to help you detect the rules, and then what you should do in terms of response. Right? So we're really advancing towards what I like to call the perceptive enterprise. Right? It's sort of being able to create, from a mind perspective, the analogy of an organization being able to anticipate through perceptive, whether it be, whatever auditory or other inputs you can have, perceive what's about to happen, have your anticipatory, reactions in place, and respond in the moment. Right? And then learn from that. Right? So you measure it and go back again in an adaptive sense. That's possible today. That's what we saw happen, right, on the stock market as one example. Right? There's many, many other examples. You've got Amazon doing this every day. You've got Federal Express sending millions of packages a day from to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Right? That doesn't happen by accident. Right? That's because they all understand, they detect what's going to happen with regards to weather patterns and human behavior and equipment breakdowns and package logistics systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they get it there. Why? Because they're making better decisions with real-time analytics, and they're responding to things that are going to happen that's they consider to be a threat before it happens. Other companies take advantage of it, like Amazon and Macy's and others, right? It's the retail thing, that behavior concept. They understand what's about to happen, or a consumer is going to leave their website or leave their store, whatever it is that's important to them, and they take action immediately. And oftentimes, stop that from happening. They'll upsell you, they'll cross-sell you, they'll do something else, or they'll make that sticky relationship even stickier, okay, by giving you something in context, something that means something to you in that moment. Not last week, not tomorrow, right? Like, oh gosh, you're in Macy's and it's your wife's birthday tomorrow, how the heck do they know that? And they're giving you a coupon for something she likes, right there at the cash register, which is a nanosecond. That transaction occurs in a second, right, literally. And yet they're able to produce a, hey, guess what? Your wife was in, the salesperson remembered, or she was on a website, whatever the case is, they found out somehow because they're monitoring all these events and they're able to hit you with something right away. Dynamic adaptation, perception, response. So let's talk a little bit about the history here. More than 3 decades. It's sort of been like this. Something occurs in a computing system, transaction, right? An event, an entry, right? It gets put in a database. Right? The advent of databases. They haven't always been around, folks. I'm old enough to know when they came around. Right? We were there. I was there. I don't know about who else in this room. Maybe not many of you, but we were there. Right? So, but persistent data means persistent. It stops moving. Right? So now you got to do something with it. You got to go back in it. And oftentimes the analysis is, well, I got to do a cube, and I got to call my IT department, and can we get to the information, and what about ontology, and can it semantically interoperate with what I'm looking to get, and blah, 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 blah. And okay, by the time that happens, and then you get access to the information, and you look at it, now you got to model it, now you got to understand it, right? Now you got to plan your reaction, and now you got to exercise your reaction. And arguably, most of healthcare is done today like this with computer systems. Arguably. I may not say most, maybe that word's inaccurate, but however, that's about how it goes. And up until the last 15 years, pretty much how it has gone in other industries as well. Well, what's gone on is the technology has moved forward, as we have discussed. Right? So it's all about modernizing your IT infrastructure. What does that mean? Well, you've made great investments in CPOE systems and revenue cycle engines, and in capacity and utilization management and disease management, et cetera. You've made all these wonderful investments, right? EMR's fantastic concept, right? Implementations stinko, right? I mean, right? Who gets to their information in their EMR when they want, how they want, for free? Anybody? Raise your hand, because I want to talk to you about it. That's how Eric and I met. At a conference, I'm up here spieling all this stuff, and he's like, hold it, you mean to tell me I can get to my stuff that's in my the EMR system? I don't have to mention the name because it's one of those biggies. There's only 2 of them, but anyway. Starts with me. Okay? He's like, I gotta talk to you.
Ellipsis doesn't exist anymore.
Ellipsis, very good. Touche. That's right, actually, and neither will the others in terms of my prognostication, but that's a whole other story. We had that at dinner. Pretty provocative. I think they're all gonna do that. Where's Matt Zubler? He's probably on a call somewhere, because we had this conversation at dinner last night, and I said, look, he said, well, all these guys are getting together because, they want to share information, and no. They're starting to feel the slope getting slippery, right? What's happening is we're breaking down the walls of proprietary engines. We're allowing organizations to gain access to monitor, to use, and to exercise and act on information that's in anything. Right, in your CPOE, in your revenue cycle, right, in your financial ERP systems, wherever, in your patient management and utilization. Okay, all of these transactions going through the same pipe with a glass lens that you can look down and see and observe in real time. And I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes an illustration, kind of hokey, but just kind of gives you an indication of you can actually understand, right, and react in real time, and do it over and over again and get better at it, right, utilizing this technology. It's called complex event processing. It's sort of the top end of this whole thing. It's sort of a stack of software that does not replace what you currently have invested in. It optimizes your investments. It takes advantage of the data you have inherent in these siloed systems and creates information out of it. Sounds cliche. You've heard marketing people use those terms, data to information. Yeah, no, it's real. And not only just information and knowledge, but actionable, something you can act on right now and make a difference. You can influence what's about to happen. Okay? So here's how it goes. So a transaction occurs, an event, right, which is sort of like a bunch of transactions in a pattern. And again, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes in detail. Right? You understand and you react. FedEx packages coming from Singapore to here tomorrow morning. Guess what? Big storm. Plane has to land early. Well, what's going to happen now? It's like 300, 400 packages on that aircraft. What's going to happen? They're all going this way. Those contingencies are already fired before that plane hits the ground. Packages are moved, put back on distribution units. It's back out. It still gets here at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. That's not by accident. Okay, it's because they understood what was about to happen before it happened. Weather patterns were being monitored, traffic patterns in the air, on the ground, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, there's always the storage capabilities for future. This is profound. Okay, I'll make a prognostication here in that I believe in the next 5 to 7 years, and I'm being conservative, and I very rarely am conservative. The use of databases in everyday transaction processing is gone. Right? It was the advent of, wow, now we get to put information in a repository and do something with it. That was pretty cool, and it was. It was profound. I was there. Right? We used to have tape. It was sequential. Remember that stuff? Right? I mean, I grew up at 18 years old, slapping tape on a machine and pushing the glass up and pressing a button. That's how information used to be stored. Right? In a library, bigger than this floor. You have to go, I mean, you literally would run, right? Look at this, get this tape number and put it on that machine. You get in, you put like 60 tapes on your arm, run, slap it on, do this, and keep doing that. That's how information was stored in the old days. And it's funny. Right now we've got these devices that, forget it, nothing stays, everything's virtual.
And I'm thinking that was mag tape, which was a step ahead of the paper tape.
Paper tape, that's correct. Actually, I was there with paper too, but I don't want to say that. That's right. Remember paper tape? You actually punched holes in it? That could sue you and me, okay? There's a reason why CIO Magazine picked you and I, right? Because we weren't going to be around very much longer.
Historians of the group.
Exactly. Exactly, right? So it's profound. And let's take advantage of it because it's possible today. Big data, schmig data. That's a marketing term, guys. That's a bunch of hoo-ha. And Hadoop, yeah, that's a good way to organize all your hardware and stuff like that. That's good. It's helpful. It's a good use of your hardware. Nice. But how do you get to that information? How do you strip off the noise? How do you make sure you're focusing in on the critical elements? of your actionable information. How do you do that? Right? How do you create from all of this stuff something you can act on to influence a lifestyle choice? How do you get the information from a warehouse or from memory, which is what's going on right now, right, to create a revenue opportunity or to reduce the risk on an opportunity? You're going to lose a group if you're a health plan. You're going to lose a big, large group, and IBM Corporation is going to go to a different player. God forbid that happens to whoever has the IBM account. Right? It's probably McCarthy, New York, right? Because Darmok, where their headquarters is, right? So the point is, that's not going to happen. Trust me. There's people looking at that. There's systems that are looking at that. How do you take this information, utilizing real-time evidence-based, and influence what's about to occur in that episodic event with that patient in that moment right now? What's the protocol? What's the diagnosis? What's the indication? What are the metrics? What are the diagnostics telling me to do right now? How about the evidence base? What's the criteria? How about the level of care? All at the same time in context for that moment, for that patient. It's possible today. Right? It's possible today. It's being done today. Here's an example. Right? So our friends at Mercy embraced this 2 years ago. And they actually started off on the interoperability side because you actually have to get to the information before you're able to do all this stuff. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But they were able to take this information today and they're able to intercept hospital-induced infection and reduce the length of stay and the cost associated with that, which is obviously cost, quality, and experience. Because if you're a patient in a hospital, you know, not getting infection is good. It's a better experience than the other alternative. They've also used the same software to manage Readmits, right? So there's a financial gain here. Of course, it also has to do with cost of care, right? But it's the same software. It's the same capabilities, right? Their Readmits now are down substantially, right? They don't publish the numbers, so I don't have them in hand, but I would promise you that they're down substantially. And Eric has spoken to them, right? So it's profound what can happen if you embrace it, right? Here's what the chief technology officer at the time said about Readmits. He was using a service prior to this new platform, this complex event concept. And the organization would send him information on possible Readmits. Unfortunately, he'd get it like 40 days later. And I think he says it here, yeah, whenever someone was admitted, don't give me their name, just give me the telephone number to the hospital because that's where they are. They're back in the hospital, right? It was too late. Information's too late. They're back in the hospital. All right, so how do you get there? You know, certainly not by putting something in a brown bag and sitting down in the corner here, but you know, it's just sort of but how do you get there, right? I would submit to you that, and again, the Office of the National Coordinator was launched here in this building, on this floor, right? And back in 2004, Dr. Brailer says, hey look, interoperability, if you cannot get to the information, you cannot improve the quality of care. You cannot improve the cost of care. You cannot transform your enterprise, let alone the entire industry. Right? A profound statement. Interoperability as the cornerstone. Well, guess what? That's a long time ago. He made that proclamation. And it's true. It was true then. It is true today. And yet our industry struggles with the problem. And yet we have organizations that are selling to you proprietary systems where they have your information about your patients and they're going to charge you and tell you when, how much, and how you're going to get this information. That's ridiculous, unacceptable, right? And it is not necessary in today's technology world, right? This is something we're going to fix. Right? How are we going to fix it? Well, we're going to pursue this from the top with our inspirational goals being transforming the industry, but we're going to follow the game plan by saying, look, we need interoperability. In order for me to monitor the millions and billions of events, right? So the sepsis thing, Mercy, they've got 4 million just HL7 messages, right? 4 million a day going across their pipe. That's just HL7. That's not counting all the other stuff, CPOE, revenue cycle, everything else they've got going down the pipe, right? But you need to get to it. And you need to get to it in a way you can understand it and operate with it in an agnostic sense, right? That allows you to optimize your information assets, gain access to it, monitor it, determine patterns, things that kind of happen together or are related in some way, and understand the context around that, right? Which would allow you, right, to act in real time because you could put modeled responses in that matches up those patterns as they start to unfold, you know, in memory every day. sort of a roadmap to get there. So a 3-step process. It's not that simple, but it's that simple if you think about it. CIOs in the room or the other IT people that are responsible for their enterprises, and for the hybrids like Jack and Paul who do it both, right, you guys get this. I mean, if you can't get to the information, you're not going anywhere. Right? If you can get to it, now what do you do with it? Right? Because getting to it's not the goal. Acting on it in the right manner is the goal. Right? So what is it all about? It's agility. So I like to use the expression, I like to use the analogy. And actually, someone in the room that would get it because he was a professional defensive back, right? So a defensive back in the NFL. No National Football League, right? So defensive back is the one, for those who anybody not know about football? So, okay, so it's the person who has to defend against the pass, pretty much, and other things too. The best ones, right, have the physical prowess, you have to have that, right? Your ability has to be there, but the perception, the anticipation, right? The starting before that pass is thrown. Why? Because they perceive where the eyes are looking, or where the head is turning to the quarterback, or the arm pump, or the cut that the receiver's making in front of them or behind them, or the movement of people in the line. All of that information is taken into account, not cognitively, not sitting there thinking about all this, but it's happening. Right? They're aware of it. It's a pattern. Something occurs, they're there first, they stop the pass. Right? That's what we're talking about here. Creating agility for your enterprise. Right? And it's all about complex event processing. Right? Everyone sort of knows, you know, if you go back into the black belt components of the Malcolm Baldrige Awards, right? You have to make decisions based on information. Right? Something happens, you measure the impact, you determine the root cause, and you correlate it to the the source. You remove it, and you take your actions. It's sort of standard process. But the problem is in healthcare, right? Most of the time, these are time-sensitive decisions that have to be made. Right? With regards to cancer treatment, these are time. We just talked about, used that word a lot yesterday. I used that reinforced it in my mind. These are things that, and it's not an argument here. I don't believe in this group. That the sooner you get a better diagnosis, the sooner you get the right clinical evidence base, the sooner you make a better decision, right? The better the outcome. I mean, it's sort of. I think that's pretty much mutually agreed upon in this group. But the problem is there's too much latency in that today. There's just too much time to get to that. Remember that transaction database analyze, respond kind of thing? There's just too much in it. So what complex event processing allows you to do is optimize all of that, okay? And bring that action time down to a tolerable level. Allowing your organization to first recognize, model, and then act. And as your universe of things that you start to do that on, right, you start to act on some of the things you know are repetitive, you know want to happen automatically. Now you start to reduce all of the interruptions that typically go to a clinical practitioner. People are like, oh, send an alert. How many alerts do your doctors get a day? Or would an organization send them to, right? Michael, I mean, how many, everybody will send an alert to a doctor or to a nurse. I mean, they got so many alerts, they have bells and whistles and dashboards, and right? It's limiting that universe by having your system act on those that you know have to happen in an iterative sense. So you reduce the amount of things that the clinical practitioner has to use human intuition in addition to information to execute, which makes you much more efficient at the point of care. Right? And so our theory is that will improve the outcome. So I'm just going to go through a little cartoon, right? So we talk about, events. Let's pretend some of these are events and some of these are transactions and so on and so forth. And those events are occurring. Now the key is, it's not just an event that's happening. Let's pretend this is in memory, right? These kind of things have to have partners. There are patterns of things that occur at the same time, right? So you've got, a discharge, and you've got the, an EMR update, and you've got, some discharge, okay, there's a HIPAA transaction and stuff like that, but there's some patterns that are starting to evolve here. Is that important to you? I'm not sure, but if you start to search these patterns and you have the ability to understand all of this, right, you're going to soon correlate what's important to you, right? You're going to pull that pattern together, right, and you're going to start to form something that's important to you. You have decided that a level of care decision can be made. Much better because you've correlated all the components of what is happening, right, and you're able to put it into context of what you're trying to decide about that patient, about that decision, about that protocol, about that drug, right? Or, if it's not clinical, it's about that health plan, it's about that consumer, right, et cetera, et cetera. So once you have the context, you're able to analyze it underneath the light of that context and decide whether or not it's good or bad. Is this something that's good? Let's let it go. If it's not, let me figure out what I have to do to intervene. Right? So you model a response. And that response is modeled, and now you can keep that in memory. If you like the interaction of how that response influences the outcome of that pattern, right, you keep it there, and you move on, you make it automated, and it happens in real time. That's, again, taking all those different actions you have to take and minimizing the universe of stuff that needs to be done today by a human, right, down to a machine so that the humans can do what the higher order things that are necessary and that they can add value to. Responding in real time, right? You first must understand, and the key is as many monitored sources as you possibly can gain increases your universe of making better decisions. So it's not just EMR, it's not just HL7, it's not just a transaction from the COP, as much as possible. Think about that financial services, they're looking at all accounts in the world, all Twitter accounts in the world, and they're monitoring keywords. White House, explosion, president, boom, act, go. That's how it happened. I mean, oversimplified, but effectively, that's it. Similar thing, once you understand it, you've correlated the information, you've developed the context around it, right? And you've assimilated what you determine is your diagnosis. What are you going to do at that point in time? You've anticipated, so now that anticipation is built into your memory. So now this pattern starts to form later on, right? You already have the framework laid out because of history, because it's also accessing your database, not just an active memory, right? It's a data grid in memory it's happening, but also accesses all of your historical files and looks back, so it doesn't have to happen today. It could have happened 3 weeks ago. If you're still listening for that pattern, you can detect it, and then you can act. Modeling and then firing. You can do it. We can do it. This is our goal. All right, real fast, a couple more cartoons, right? The key is, by the way, that one pattern can be looked at through different lenses. Right, so for the first time around, I'm just going to put some things up here. There's a lot more inputs. These are inputs. This is supposed to be diagnostic monitoring. It didn't look good with those words in this thing, so I didn't put it on here. Right? So the point, let's just pretend that it says diagnostic monitoring. This is just 6 sources. Many other sources going into your system. But think about when you're looking at this particular event from a patient perspective. There are some things you're interested in. I just threw a few on the screen. HCAPS, right? What's the outcome? What is the diagnosis proper? Right? Things like that. How about the registry? The information is other things you want to know, but it's context on patient. Same pattern, you're looking at it differently from a cost perspective. Right? What about level of care? Is this person supposed to be in the ICU or not? Is this person in a transition of care being treated in an outpatient facility properly? Have they taken their meds? Right? Early intervention, does it match up with the care plan? How about the diagnosis, does that still fit? Et cetera, et cetera. Early intervention. The same pattern can be looked at through another lens. How about this moment, right? Is this a catastrophic situation? Can I handle it? Am I actually maximizing my resources, right? What about pharmacy, et cetera, right? So different views of the same. So not only you're looking at and modeling response on one pattern you've recognized as a threat or an opportunity, but you could look at that same scenario in different contexts, right? Just like the human being does when they're watching that quarterback, right, and have to respond. There's so many other things being taken into account. There's not a thought pattern. It's all intuition. It's all perception. Right? Disease, same thing. Again, still looking at the same situation, context. So I've drawn up a value curve. It sort of summarizes things a little bit, how I would see an organization going through a maturity model, if you will, to implement a scenario like this, growing up through Interoperate, right? Being able to accurately take diverse data and understand it, optimize it by matching patterns mathematically, not through science, and then reacting all the way up through the maturity curve. We call that the event-enabled platform maturity. There's a platform that I described earlier, and as you go through this curve, your organization is able to gain value at each step along the way. Interoperability will save you money. That Mercy example before, when I said they took our platform, this is Typico's platform they used. Not the only one in the world, the best one, but that's my biased opinion. The only commercial you hear today. But what they started out is with an interoperability goal, and they saved themselves 700 system interfaces, APIs, if you will. They were implementing a new EMR system, and they had 2,500 interfaces. They saved themselves 700 by going to an interoperability platform. Of those 700 interfaces, they estimated it cost them annually $12,000 per interface to maintain, per year. 700 times 12,000 per year. What's that business case? Pretty good. Right, so there's value along the way. Just to close, a couple of keywords. Consider interoperability in your game plan. We're going to talk about that today. Right, I introduced the concept of perceptive enterprise, right, and the ability to drive agility to respond to your situations. I use the sports analogy, use whatever works for you. Right, and the key is adaptive. This isn't one bullet that fixes all problems. It's an iterative process, a learning process, machine learning, if you will, right, for your organization to take you to your goal. And so with that, I thank you very much for your patience. I might have dragged down a little bit, but I do think it's important stuff. I'm obviously inspired by it, so thank you very much. I appreciate it.